the happiest time of my life. The milkman laid me back on Mrs. Gorman's bed, and in a very short time the best physician in the neighbourhood was bending over me. He didn't think it beneath his dignity to be of service to a dog. He put some cool dressing on my wounded paws, bound them up, and told Mrs. Gorman not to disturb me. Then he went away and said he would call later in the day. By that time my dear master had arrived, and was sitting beside me. Shall I ever forget that meeting? Master broke down. "My poor boy, my poor boy," he said, and he took my head between his hands. I was almost delirious with joy. I couldn't stand up, so I just rolled over and over on the bed and kicked in ecstasy. Lie still, boy," he said with tears in his eyes, and he gently pushed me back to my proper position. "My poor little lad, a regular sapper engineer dog, dug yourself out of prison. Well, there's one thing sure, you'll never be in one again. I've bought a pair of police dogs, and they patrol the place day and night. You are a brave little doggie, but you have a good heart, and you don't always know evil characters." As he spoke about German dogs, Oscar came pushing his muzzle toward him. "You grand young animal," said master, fondling him. "I cannot be grateful enough to you. Granny Gorman," and master called over his shoulder to the dear old woman who as of old was making him a cup of tea, "you must do something for your dog when you get your reward." Granny came toward the bed with her brown teapot in her hand. "What reward, sir?" "The reward for finding my boy. The check is all ready whenever you are." She made big round eyes at him, inside her widow's cap. "Why, sir, the police caught those men." "You and your dog found my dog," said master decidedly. "The money is yours." She dropped the teapot in her amazement. "Not $2,000?" "Yes, $2,000," he said. She stood deliberating a long time. Her eyes went to the picture of her deceased husband on the wall, to the framed wreath taken from his coffin, to the photograph of her two boys standing clasping each other in an almost death grip. Then she said very slowly, "You're a rich man, and I suppose it don't seem anything to you, but to me it's a fortune." "I wish it were 10,000," he said heartily. "However, one can't measure gratitude by money. I'm your friend for life." "Sir, that's better than the money," she said with a smile, running all over a wrinkled old face. "If you'll bring that lovely dog of yours to see me sometimes, it'll be better than bags of gold to me." Master didn't say any more, and she didn't. They understood each other. He made her sit down, while he picked up the pieces of broken teapot from the rag mat. Then he came back to me. "You little rascal," he said lovingly. "I believe I'll be a beggar soon if you keep on. Exhibiting you in that show has dragged me into endless litigation. The pictures and descriptions of you in the newspapers have brought former owners buzzing about my ears like angry bees. I've had to buy you over and over again, and your kidnapping cost me a heap more." I licked his strong hands. My dear master, he would sell his house before he would part with me. Then I looked anxiously in his face. He knew what I wanted, and he began to tell me about home affairs. "Young George has mourned you like a brother," he said smilingly. "He has gone about the house wailing, 'I want my Borsie, I want my Borsie,' and when night came, and you did not appear for your frolic in the nursery, he has often cried with disappointment." "And mistress?" I wondered as I gazed at him. "She has been perfectly upset about you," he said, "and Amarilla, the little dog is pining away and looks like a skeleton. We did not know that she was so fond of you. The veterinary says that if you do not return soon she will die. As soon as I had the telephone message from the police headquarters here, I shouted the news of your recovery through the house, and Amarilla acted like a wild creature. Afterward, for she has little strength, she fell down exhausted. I was terribly excited at this news. I tried to stagger to my feet. I whined and begged him to take me home. "I don't believe it would hurt you," he said good-humouredly, "though I forgot to ask your physician." He laughed at me as he said this, and went to the telephone. "It hasn't been mended, sir, since those young rascals cut it," said Granny. "Then I'll run over and see him in my car," said master, and he went to the door. Pretty soon he came back. "It's all right, boy. Come along, we'll go home." Granny Gorman carried out pillows and coverlets, and put a hot water bottle beside me, for the afternoon was cold. Wasn't I a happy dog? Master whistled like a boy as we sped on our way home. I lay as snug as possible on the floor of the racing car, but it seemed a long time before we got to the pleasant river road, although we were going like the wind. However, we came at last within sight of the lights of the avenue. I heard master say, "Hello, Baron Ledger, jump right in. We're open to inspection," and he stopped suddenly. A powerful German police dog stepped in cautiously beside me, and nosed my bundle of wraps. "So," he said in a deep foreign voice, "you are the dogling here. There has been such a stir about. If you run to get stolen again, it won't be at night. I'm on guard then." "Danke," I murmured. "You are a good fellow. I can tell by the sound of your voice." "No compliments," he said gruffly. "Just work, work. Moo hoo, moo hoo." And he howled like a siren. Master burst out laughing and stopped to let him out. "I never saw such zeal," he exclaimed. "You want to be on guard all the time. A short drive would not take up too much time." Baron Ledger, with an exceedingly intense manner, leapt out before the machine stood still, and went on with his work of examining every inch of ground about the estate. "He's a treasure," said master enthusiastically. "Doesn't hurt anyone, but keeps every stranger under surveillance. You other dogs can sleep o' nights now. If any wanderers come, the Baron and his brother police dog will take care of them." I whined to let him know I was listening, and he went on gaily. "There's a great fashion of giving double surnames and handles to dogs and horses' names. You're Boy of Pleasant River now, if it please you. You're too distinguished for just plebeian Boy." I gave a kind of dog chuckle. How little I cared what I was called, as long as I was permitted to live with him. It seemed to me my heart would burst with joy when the car drew up before the big hall door, and dogs and human beings rushed out to greet me. Good King Harry was there, and Canny and Zerina, all barking and jumping with excitement and pleasure. Make way there for the distinguished hero, Boy of Pleasant River," called master, and taking me in his arms, he carried me into the hall and laid me on the settle. Mistress was about to lay hold of me, but drew back at the sight of my blackness. "Oh, Rudolph," she said, "I didn't realize what the dark colour would be." "It isn't our Boy." "Yes, it is your boy," I squealed, and I reached my tongue far out and licked her hands. "You poor, poor doggie," she said, "how you have suffered." And she patted and caressed me, and then examined her hands to see if the black came off. "We'll have it all washed off in a few days," said master. "He's a sick dog yet." Just here I gave a sharp bark of excitement. Master had hinted at a surprise waiting for me, and now I knew what it was. The surprise was Beanie. That dear dog was on his hind legs behind the settle, licking me, nosing me, assuring me that he loved me as well as he did that mournful day 2 years ago when he had to go down south with Ellen. I should perhaps have explained before that the reason why Beanie never saw young George, and never came to Pleasant River, was on account of Ellen receiving sudden news of the illness of her only sister down in Virginia. She had started off for that state in a great hurry, taking Beanie with her. The sister had died, leaving her some money, and she had come back to New York to see her son Robert Lee, who was now married, and master had invited her to come out to Pleasant River. "Beanie, Beanie!" I gasped. "How handsome you look, and if I'm not glad to see you, where's old Helen?" "There!" he exclaimed, looking over his shoulder, and lifting my head a little more, I saw Ellen coming down the staircase leading young George. Bessie had gone away to care for a sick mother, and Ellen was taking care of our baby. Wasn't that good old woman glad to see me? "Why didn't you run to old Ellen," she said lovingly, "the way you did when you was lost before?" My mind harked back to the time I first saw her, but I could not very well explain that this affair had been different from my voluntary running away. Young George's face was a study. He had heard his playmate had come back, and he had his young fresh mouth wide open as if he were going to swallow something nice. At first I felt sorry that they had allowed him to see me in my present state. He was only a baby. My colour would frighten him, and he would think I was a strange dog. This is where I miscalculated. I might have known how he would take the thing, and I might have remembered how often I have said that children are cleverer than grown people. His dear mother was shrinking a little bit from me. George, after getting off the staircase, trotted up to me, and threw his arms round my neck. He didn't hesitate an instant. He knew I was his own Borsie. "Bad man," he said after he had nearly hugged me to death. "Bad man, make Geordie's Borsie brack." And seizing a corner of his little pajama jacket, he spat on it and tried to rub some of my dye off. His mother exclaimed, "How primitive! George, my darling, don't spit on things." "Pittin's easy," he said, and he started to polish me off again, when his father interfered, and promising him the pleasure of properly washing some of the colour off the next day, sent him to bed. As he climbed upstairs, holding tight to Ellen's hand, I heard a gentle noise such as a cat might make, and leaning my head over the settle, saw Amarilla toddling toward me. What a little skeleton! I was terribly shocked. "Poor girlie," said mistress, "now you will get fat," and she lifted her up beside me. Amarilla never said a word. She gave me a perfectly heart-rending glance from her big frightened eyes, and cuddled up close to me. She lay there till they carried me up to master's room, when she followed behind like a little mourner. "Amarilla," called mistress later on, when I had been placed on my own bed, which was a big French bergère in master's dressing room. "Aren't you coming to sleep in my room?" I heard a little stirring beside my chair, but she did not go to mistress. "Claudia," said master, "I advise you to leave her in the same room with Boy for a day or two. She has had a great fright about him. She will go back to you later." "Very well," said mistress in her pretty voice, and master, bending down, took the trembling Amarilla and put her on a cushion bench close to my chair. "You mustn't touch his bandaged foot, doggie," he said to her, but there was no need of warning her. The anxious little dog just wished to be near me. She was dazed from suffering, and was afraid that I would go away again. What a faithful little heart! "Amarilla," I said, "I missed you and Gringo more than any of the other dogs." She still said nothing, but stretched out her tiny pink tongue and licked my bandages very softly. "Go to sleep," I said. "We shall have some fine romps on the lawn when my feet get better." She drew a long, pitiful sigh and closed her eyes. How could anyone ever ill-treat a timid, shrinking thing like that? I can understand how a man can beat a fox terrier, but a toy spaniel, never. I did not go to sleep for some time, for there was something on my mind. I wanted to see Gringo. I wondered that the dear old fellow had not been over to welcome me. Surely he knew that I had come home. I thought he would be the first to greet me. Surely that lie would not be bothering him yet. End of chapter 28. Chapter 29. My Own Dear Home. Bright and early the next morning, I heard a sniffling at master's dressing-room door, followed by a knock. Master opened the door, and there stood Mr. Bonstone and Gringo. They both came toward me, and Mr. Bonstone fondled my head. "Fine boy," he said. "You did some good footwork." Then he began talking to Master, who was brushing his hair vigorously with his military brushes. The two men were like brothers. Gringo came close to my chair. "Hello, old boy," I said, and then we stared at each other. There was a most beautiful expression in his dark eyes. "Gringo," I said in a low voice, "you missed me." "I've not a minute's peace since you left," he said. "I've suffered more than you did." "Forget it," I returned hastily. "I can't," he said. "I was a brute. The morning after you disappeared, I went over to Greenland's and got ready Omer. 'Make yourself at home,' I said, and he's been over to our place every day since. And I don't boss the youngsters so much. I have to a bit, seems as if it's in my blood." "You're a great old dog," I said admiringly, "but don't think of the past. We're going to have lots of good times in the future." "So long," he said abruptly. "My boss has to get to town." I watched him rocking out of the room. How the old dog had aged! I was quite shocked. My convalescence was rapid. Not many days later I had my bandages off, and was able to limp about the place. The first day I was strong enough to get up to the orchard. I received what the newspapers called an ovation. It was a lovely day, and not too cold. The dogs formed a circle about me on the snow, and I had to relate the story of my capture. I looked round on their faces. Our Pleasant River dogs, the Greenhill dogs, Reddy O'Mare, and many other neighbour dogs, and a sudden shyness fell upon me. Gringo was chairman, and to give me a chance to recover, he began to tell how I was caught, and purposely related it in a wrong way. "No, it wasn't like that," I interrupted, and the old dog, with a smile, told me to go on, and finish the story properly. I got excited and talked for an hour. Then we had a jubilation. The dogs all ran round and round, and frisked and barked, and watching them I shouted suddenly, "Hurrah for American dogs! We beat the world!" They all barked a chorus of approval. Then we separated. Gringo and I kept together, and had one of our old time walks and talks. "Let's go over to your place," I said. "I don't believe it would be too much for me." "Lean on me if it hurts you to walk," he said affectionately. I pressed close to the dear old fellow, and as we sauntered along we gossiped. "I can't tell you," I said, "what a pleasure it is to have Beanie here." "He had a great time down south," said Gringo, "but he was glad to get back to little old New York." "Strange to say, I've been on that big estate he visited," I said. "Used to be an old plantation that belonged to one of the F.F.V.'s." "Who are they?" asked Gringo. "First Families of Virginia. Ellen's sister was a mammy on the place." "Ellen's going to stay with you, I guess," said Gringo. "Is that so?" I said. "Why, she's only supposed to be visiting." "I know, but I heard your master tell my boss that he is pleased to have a Southern mammy for young George. She has ideas about flowers and animals that your boss likes." "Won't that be splendid?" I said. "Beanie is frightfully worried about leaving Mrs. Granton." "He is a regular steady and true dog," said Gringo. "When he came, he didn't know which to follow, old Helen or your mistress, so he settled it by tracking one of them for half a day and the other for the next half." I laughed at this, and Gringo went on. "The other day I saw your boss watching Helen with joy on his face. It was in your greenhouse, and young George had yanked a hyacinth from a pot. Ellen half cried, and said the poor mother hyacinth had been imprisoned in the black earth, and finally she worked her way out, and shook her curls at the sun, and then George came along and tore her all to bits. The youngster sniffed too, and helped Ellen tie Mother Hyacinth up with a bit of string. Your boss liked that. He hates to see his boy destroy life." "Good," I said. "I hope she'll stay. Do you suppose, Gringo, if those two young scamps that stole me had had the same chance that George has, they would be so bad?" "Course not," said the old dog. "Then why, in heaven's name," I said, "don't human beings give all the boys and girls an equal chance?" "Give it up," said Gringo. "I believe it's selfishness," I said, blinking my eyes in the bright sunlight on the snow, for my sight had got weak in my prison. "There's Sir Walter," said Gringo, "giving his hens a last run before sundown. He keeps them in fine shape. See him nose them along. He's a wise dog." As he waited to speak to Sir Walter, Arnulf the police dog trotted by. He did not stop, just gave us a rapid wag of his tail. Walter Scott gazed after him. "It fatigues me to watch him," he said. "He's never still." "No matter about that," said Gringo. "He's here to keep strangers off the place, and he does it. They used to be always poking him out when us other dogs ruled. We were too polite by a long way. We never drove strangers away, unless they were in pages." Sir Walter smiled and said, "I saw him the other day get in front of a woman who persisted in coming up through the open gates. She thought he looked kind, and began to tear ivy from the wall. Arnulf growled at her, but she went on. Then he took her skirt between his teeth and tore it. She was in a rage, and started throwing some ivy in his face. He opened his mouth and bellowed so angrily that she hurried away, looking over her shoulder. Pardon me, I must keep my hens moving." "Come on," said Gringo. "The sun will be going down soon." We went on, via the rock wall, and Gringo hung his head as we passed the place where the two men had lassoed me. "Boy," he said hoarsely, "do you see that spot there, all pressed down?" I stuck my head in the alders, and saw a matted place in the grass, quite free from snow. "I always keep it clean," he said. "I used to sit there when you were gone, and think what a good dog you are, and what an old crosspatch I am." I began to laugh. I was so happy I couldn't help it. "Don't be too humble," I said. "We may have another falling out." Gringo was quite shocked, and stopped short. "Why not?" I said gaily. "Fight and forgive and make up. Fight and forgive and make up. That's life." "I don't believe in fighting," said Gringo soberly. "Nor do I," said I. "But if fights come, don't dodge them. Dogs aren't perfect, nor are human beings." "My boss don't fight his wife," said Gringo. "Nor does mine," I retorted. "But sometimes they are just a little sharp with each other. Then they kiss and make up. You and I have kissed and made up. I don't want you to go mourning all your days because you once snapped at me. It was partly my fault. I got on your dog nerves." Gringo grinned at me. Then he said, "You're a comic dog. Trouble runs off you like water off a duck's back. Good land, how I missed you. Come on, let's trot a bit. It won't hurt you." "Cows first," I said, and then we struck Green Hill and I limped into the stable. I loved Mr. Bonstone's jerseys, and the big fragrant creatures, chewing their cud, boo-hooed at me, for they knew I liked them, and they had heard of my adventures. I went from stall to stall and greeted them, then rejoined Gringo, who was fussing about the stable door because I was so long. "Come on up to see the horses," he said. "I see my boss just going up with an S.P.C.A. man he brought out from the city today." I limped gleefully after him. The green steel stables always reminded me of the Leland Stanford stables in California, which are kept so quiet for the horses, and where they have the same intelligent care as they do here. The S.P.C.A. gentleman was quite old, and he was standing beside Mr. Bonstone. and staring about him with great interest. The stable doors were wide open. Each horse or colt had a good-sized box stall to himself, and every one of them was turned head toward the door, watching Thomas, who was repairing a cement combination drinking fountain in the middle of the stable yard. It was for human beings, horses, birds, and dogs. Something had gone wrong in the foundation, and Thomas was on his knees on the ground, with a pail of cement beside him, and a hammer and chisel. "Thomas," said Mr. Bonstone, "talk a bit to the horses, will you?" Thomas touched his cap, and was about to get up, but Mr. Bonstone said, "Keep on with your work, and call them about you as I have seen you do." Thomas, who was a very quiet but a very intelligent man of English ancestry, said, "All right, sir," and, seizing the hammer, he threw it to one side and called out, "Fernbrook, deputy, bring me the big hammer from the tool box." The old gentleman in the big fur coat turned his spectacles in the direction of the stable. Fernbrook, who was a powerful bay horse, was lifting up the bar of his stall with his teeth. Afterward he pounded the whole length of the table with his heavy hoofs, bent over a tool box, took out a large hammer, and dropped it beside Thomas. Mr. Bonstone smiled proudly, and the old gentleman said, "Magnificent!" "Dolly Whitehead, bring me my coat," called Thomas, going on with his pounding. A dapper little white mare let herself out of her stall, went up to a hook where an overcoat was hanging, and carried it out to the yard, holding it high so it would not drag on the snow. As she stood dangling it from her mouth, Thomas jumped up and said rebukingly, "Why don't you help her out and put it on me, Fernbrook?" To the old gentleman's surprise, Mr. Bonstone, Gringo, and I had, of course, seen these performances many times before. The two sagacious animals held the coat by the back of the neck, while Thomas slipped his arms in it. "Major Golderay," called Thomas, "I want you." A roan horse, a perfect beauty, came stepping daintily out. "Also Duchess of Normandy," said Thomas, "Lady Jane Grey, and poor Polly." The animals all came out and formed a line-up before him. "Lady Jane," said Thomas, "where is your friend Joe?" Lady Jane whinnied several times, and shook her head in the direction of the barn. "I know he's bedding the cows," said Thomas, "but you go tell him I want him." Lady Jane galloped away, and presently returned with her teeth in the shoulder of the woollen sweater worn by the grinning Joe, who bobbed his head at his employer and guessed. The old gentleman began to speak. "This is almost equal to the thinking horses of Elderfield." "Can you state to me," asked Mr. Bonstone, "any reason why an American horse should not have as much brains as a German horse?" "None whatever," said the old gentleman. "Horses, like men, are created equal. Tell me, stableman, what is your system?" "Haven't any, sir," said Thomas. "I treat 'em as if they had horse sense, and I find they've got it." "Cultivation, cultivation," said the old gentleman several times, as he nodded his head. Then he asked, "Can they count?" "Duchess of Normandy," said Thomas. "When is Dicky Bill coming from town?" "Dicky Bill is one of the stable boys," explained Mr. Bonstone. The Duchess was scratching 10 times in the snow with her hoof. "Hilly-ho, hilly-ho, hilly-ho," sounded a sudden ringing voice. We all turned, and there was Dicky Bill, tearing up the asphalt path from the electric car line. He didn't see us, and he rushed into the stable yard, and threw his arm around the glossy neck of the Duchess. "Hello, old girl!" "Just look at that boy's colour," whispered Gringo, "and 6 months ago he was a washed-out rag." Dicky Bill was pulling at his cap in confusion. He had just discovered Mr. Bonstone. "You've made the Duchess tell a lie," said Thomas. "I told her I was coming back at 10," said Dicky Bill, "but I changed my mind. There's nothing doing in town." Mr. Bonstone put up his head to his face to conceal a smile. His plan was to make country life so interesting that town life seemed dull. The old gentleman was speaking to Thomas. "You gave that mare some sign, didn't you?" "If I did, I didn't know it," said Thomas. "They may get something I don't get myself, for they watch me closely. If I walk down by those stalls and say to myself, 'That black mare is off her feed, I'll give her an extra ration of oats,' she'll whinny and look toward the oat bin." "My wife says," remarked Mr. Bonstone, "that when she gives a special feed of hemp to her hens, in order to catch one, they'll all eat out of her hand but the one she has her mind on." "Wonderful!" said the old gentleman. "Looks as if we were the brutes and the animals the reasoning beings. I'll have to catch my train. Thank you, my man. I'm going to send you a book about the Elderfield horses." Gringo and I travelled slowly along after Mr. Bonstone and his friends on their way to the house, but stopped on the way to speak to Czarina, Yeggie, Weary Winnie, and the Frenchmen who had had their early dinner, and were coming up to the stables for the night. As we were talking, the old gentleman and Mr. Bonstone retraced their steps. They wanted to ask something further about the horses from Thomas. The gentleman paused to look at us. "What a jolly lot of dogs," he said. "They're talking just as we are. I wonder what they're saying. Just look at those intelligent faces. They understand us, but we can't understand them." We dogs all gave each other knowing glances. "'Pon my word," growled Gringo, "it seems as if more human beings were beginning to find out that we're something more than lumps of flesh." "Gringo," I said, "my leg is beginning to ache. I must get home. But first I want to look in on your family." "Good night, dogs," we said to the stable bunch, and we went on the way to the Bonstones' big living room, where everybody gathered at this time of day. Old Mrs. Resterton sat in a corner by the fireplace, knitting and talking to an old lady friend who had her chair close beside hers. A nursemaid was bringing in Cyria and the twins from a frolic on the lawn, and Master Carty, who had just arrived from town straight as a major, was helping his young nephew and nieces to take off their wraps. Mr. Bonstone had just got out of her coop at the door. She had been calling on a neighbour, and pretty soon she came in, smiling and holding out her hands to the blaze. She greeted all her family in a loving way, and did not forget to congratulate me on my restoration to health. "We're all happy," I said to Gringo. "Now I must skip home." "I'll go with you," said Gringo. "We dogs have all sworn that you're to go nowhere without an escort." This amused me, and I tried to toss up my head and show off a bit, as we ran out into the hall and down the avenue. I could not, and had to go soberly. "Will you come in, Gringo?" I said when I got out. "Certainly," he said. "I'll stay to dinner with you." I wasn't taken aback. My kind mistress never objects when I bring a dog friend home. Some women are very fussy about entertaining. We went into the library when mistress was alone, looking over the mail that lay on the big table. She had been out walking, and still had on her warm coat and cloth hat. She never wore furs now. "Good dogs," she said absently. "Come close to the fire." And she went on reading a letter. Gringo and I lay down on my hearthstone, and presently in came master from town. He kissed his wife. "How rosy you look," he said. She let the letter slip to the table. "Do I?" she said slowly. "Yes, this life in the country is 1,000 times better for you than the city." "Oh, Rudolph," she said, "I met Stanna just now in her coop. Really that woman is resplendent. She looked like a tropical flower in a glass box. I wish I were half as handsome." "Half as handsome," repeated master in a kind of innocent, wondering way. "Do you really think you're not as good looking as Stanna?" "I don't think it," said mistress almost impatiently. "I know it." Master stared at her in amazement. Mistress burst out laughing. "I really believe, you dear, foolish man, that you think I eclipsed Stanna." "I don't think it, I know it," he said decidedly. "The boys in the street don't stare after me as they do after Stanna," she said. "That rejoices me," he said gravely. "I shouldn't care to have them staring at you." Mistress broke into a delighted peal of laughter, and I think was about to embrace him, but she wheeled round and held her arms to young George, who was entering the room, followed by Ellen and Beanie. Beanie, in spite of a warm dog sweater he had on, was shivering with cold, and held his breastbone so close to the fire that Gringo said gravely, "I smell you scorching, Beans." He moved back a bit, and I said, "How you do feel the cold." "Too much FFV," said Gringo soberly. "It does seem cold up here," said Beanie, "after that southern winter air." "Have you been to see Mrs. Waverlee?" asked Gringo. "Yes, she's fine," said Beanie enthusiastically, "and I love Patsy." "Oh, dogs, we're going to stay here. I'm crazy with pleasure. I don't want to go back to New York." We both congratulated him. Then Ellen called him to go upstairs to have his sweater off. Master and mistress went back to the topic of the looks of ladies and gentlemen. "Claudia," master was saying, "if you were to tell me that I wasn't as handsome as Norman, I would understand you." Mistress turned her back on him, and began to gather up her mail from the table. "No one would look at me twice if Norman were in the room," said master. "He's what I call a really handsome man." "Look at Mrs. Granton's shoulders shaking," muttered Gringo. "She thinks that's a joke on my boss." Mistress turned round, her face perfectly convulsed with amusement. "Rudolph!" she said, "you old goose." "Gander," corrected master. "Do the animal kingdom justice." "Gander, then," said mistress. "Norman Bonstone can't be compared with you. You are the handsomest man I ever saw." Master gave her a quizzical smile. "It looks as if we're both satisfied, doesn't it?" he said. "I am a very happy woman," she said with emphasis. "I used not to be. I am now." "Isn't much more to be added to that," said Gringo, as the two went arm in arm from the room. "It's fine to have all the bosses happy. Makes things easier for us dogs. But who comes here?" "Our unhappy ghost," I said as Amarilla sneaked into the room. "Howdy do, Dogsy," said Gringo amiably. "Do you think I am handsome?" Amarilla hesitated and looked at me in her timid way. "Weary Winnie and Reddy think I'm a beauty," said Gringo encouragingly, with a hoarse laugh. "I don't think you're exactly pretty," began Amarilla shyly, then she stopped. Gringo rolled over and over on the hearth rug in his amusement. "Oh, Amarilla, oh!" he said chokingly. "Feel happier today, girlie?" I asked as she stretched herself out on the fender stool. "Yes," she said cheerfully. "Missy weighed me today and I'm back to normal. Now you're home, I've nothing to fret about." "Human beings happy, dogs happy," said Gringo. "Looks as if there was a green old age getting right for us. Boy, I wish every animal in the world had as good homes as we have." "Gringo," I said enthusiastically, "that goes to my heart. Happiness for everybody, say I." "Write it down," said the good old dog. "You know dog hearts pretty well. Say your say to the human beings. Maybe you'll make it easier for some of the unhappy dogs." I took his remark to heart. I had already written part of the story of my life, and for the other dogs' sake, I, Boy of Pleasant River, give the rest of this little sketch to the world. End of Chapter 29. End of Boy, the Wandering Dog, by Marshall Saunders.